Good evening. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, bless his name, for the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Let's sing.
Here I am, humbled by your majesty, covered by your grace so free. Here I am, knowing I'm a sinful man, covered by the blood of the Lamb. But now I found the greatest love of all in my sins. Troubled by your majesty, covered by your grace so free. Here I am, knowing I'm a sinful man, covered by the blood of the Lamb. And now I found the greatest love of all is mine. Since you laid down your life, the greatest sacrifice. What do you think? Majesty, majesty, your grace has found me just as I am, empty-handed but alive in your hands. Majesty, majesty, forever I'm shaped by your love, in the presence of your majesty.
Just a short message tonight. In Mark chapter 6, after Jesus had fed the 5,000, we find these words. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. He was about to pass by, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it's I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed. Jin and I this week were reading something that was based on that story. And it was the whole concept that there they were on a lake and they'd just seen Jesus feed the 5,000, they'd seen him in temples, they'd seen him in synagogues, and they're the expected places, if you like. Whereas here was Jesus coming in an unexpected way. And it was while they were in this difficult place, while they were straining against the oars, while the wind was horrendous because it was all against them. It wasn't necessarily a storm, but a real difficult time that they were going through. Yeah, it made me think really that we can get so worked up on the strain of the day and trying to get through each day with this lockdown, with the restrictions and the semi-relaxing of the restrictions, etc. What does this mean and all that? That we can actually miss seeing Jesus in the storm, miss seeing Jesus in the difficulties, because we're focusing so much on the problems that are at hand, so much at the oars and the strain of trying to get through the day. It also reminded me of another story by a guy called F.W. Borum, an author that I actually like, and behind me there's a whole raft of books that he wrote. And in one of the stories he was telling of a man who was on a very difficult path. He'd never been on this path before, and it was high hedges on both sides and at times, but then occasionally you could see through the fields at gates, etc. But on this path he could actually see up ahead that there was a junction, and he was wondering, how am I going to know which path to take, because he could see that it could branches off and both branches seemed to be exactly the same, and he just couldn't work out, because the map book didn't seem to suggest anything. He was on this path and there it was, wondering about this junction ahead. Where am I going to go? How am I going to know? And when he got there was a signpost. And yet, as he'd walked down that difficult path, he'd missed everything in the hedgerows. He'd missed everything, the birds, etc., the butterflies, the bees. He was so concerned about the path and the path that he was on, he missed everything else that was going on around him. And in the end, there was nothing to worry about, because the signposts were there. My feel is that we can get so fixated on, we must get back into the church, the building, that we miss everything that God wants to show us while we're walking through life right now. He's given us today. We'll miss, if I can mix the metaphors and mix the stories, we'll miss Jesus in the storm. So let's take this time that we're having. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's horrendous. But God's in it with us, and he knows what he's doing. I've said it so many times. He knows what he's doing. He's on the throne. He's in charge. So let's trust him. And let's look for him in the storm. Let's look for him in the difficulties. Let's look for him and stop. As someone once said, what is this life if full of care? We have no time to stop and stare. Let's just stop and see God in this. Let's just stop and see Jesus in the storm.
What a friend we have, Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. Oh, because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful, who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Saviour, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms he'll shield and take thee. Thou wilt find a solace there. Here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. Oh, when the Prince of life our ransom shed for us his precious blood, who his love will not remember, who can cease to sing his praise? He can never be forgotten throughout heaven's eternal days. On the mount of crucifixion, mountains open deep and wide. Through the floodgates, God's mercy flowed a vast and gracious tide. Grace and love, like mighty rivers, poured incessant from above, and heaven's peace and perfect justice placed a guilty world in love. Grace and love, like mighty rivers, poured incessant from above, and heaven's peace and perfect justice placed a guilty world in love.
May God's blessings surround you each day as you trust Him and walk in His way. May His presence within guard and keep you from sin. Go in peace, go in faith, go in love. May God's blessings surround you each day as you trust Him and walk in His way. May His presence within guard and keep you from sin. Go in peace.